On the first episode of Democracy Does, the Civic Power Playbook.
There's things that we can control, and what you are not changing, you are choosing.
I love that. What you are not changing, you are choosing.
And I heard someone say that is so powerful. And so if you feel like I'm living in a community and there's nothing happening, what are you doing to make it different?
That's up next. Welcome to Democracy Does, the Civic Power Playbook, a podcast that cuts through the noise to explain what's really happening in our democracy. Each episode breaks down key issues with insight from policy experts and change makers, giving you clear tips to take action. Whether you're fired up or feeling stuck, you're in the right place to get informed and get inspired, because democracy works best when we all participate. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Democracy Does, the Civic Power Playbook. This is our first episode. I am so excited. As a journalist and someone who really believes in keeping people informed and empowered, this is a thrill. And I am even more excited to have our guest with us today. She is a former mayor. She is a strategist. She runs Catalyst Consulting and Transformation. Please welcome Chasity Wells Armstrong. Thank you so much for being here.
Good morning, and thank you for having me. And I'm very honored to be on your first episode.
Well, I feel very, very fortunate because you are the real deal. You have not only dedicated your life to making the world a better place, you served in public office, which is a really difficult and commendable calling, especially when you go about it for the right reasons, which you have. And so I wanted to start this conversation talking to you about what you see as someone who has had not only a really exciting and colorful career, but one that's been dedicated to the public. So, first of all, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am not the polished politician. I don't view myself as a politician. I view myself as a public servant. And so early in my career, most of my roles was in helping people, teen girls who were runaways and had been sexually abused. I did some work in state government for people who had lost their jobs through unemployment, the Department of Employment Security. I also did some work in addictions and was a substance abuse counselor for a number of years. So I've always looked at ways that I could help and serve people who tend to be marginalized, who tend to not have access to resources. I never had any desire to run for public office. I was not one of those people that was young that said that when I grow up, I know I want to be a Congress member. I was not that person. But as I became more exposed to community work and to the impact of public policy on our everyday lives, I really got interested in that. And then I started to start serving at the community level in organizations, and then eventually started running for public office.
I love that you have done that because you really started from the ground up. And I say that because I think sometimes that's the way you can understand problems at their most granular level, which leads me to the point about where we are right now. What, in your mind and in your perspective, do you think is one of the biggest issues that is happening to the American public that they don't understand, they don't realize, and what are the ramifications for not understanding what's happening?
One of the things that's happening is this mass effort of disinformation. And we have some very skilled people who are able to divide and invoke fear and play on the emotions of the American people. It has led to a distrust in our government systems. Our government is not perfect by any means, but we have established systems in our country that help people, that protect people, that provide resources and safety nets for people. And we have a regime in right now that ran on the government is bad, although they're seeking government positions themselves.
I don't
So
understand that at
so they
all.
understand that there's power in government and that who controls the power in government is very, very important. And as we seen from the first few, days, few months of the new leadership, if you want to call it that, they're dismantling our systems. The very, systems that have been put in place, for example, consumer protections, those that organization agency was put in place to protect consumers from people who don't value lives, for people who put profit over safety and health and those types of things. And you had a person dismantling those systems who benefits financially from those systems not being in place.
That's a perfect example. I'm really glad you mentioned that because I did a little piece about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that they have dismantled, they have gutted, and people do not realize that that agency was put in place to protect people from banks just arbitrarily hiking up fees to exorbitant amounts and making it almost impossible for people to get out of debt.
Yes. And who benefits from that?
Exactly. These
Not
very
n
wealthy.
not the everyday working American. Yeah, wealthy people benefit from that. The CEOs of banks, those types of people benefit from that, not working people.
In your mind, when you were elected to office, I want to mention you, first Black mayor of Kankakee, Illinois. What was that like?
Well, for me, it was deeply personal because it was my hometown. I was born and raised there. So it was very personal to me serving in that space and in that community. I watched that community transition from a very thriving community where a lot of people came to the community, particularly Black people from the South, who could get jobs in factories and live a very comfortable lifestyle, a middle class. They could own homes and take their kids on vacation, and they had retirement. And then in the 80s, I saw the community change drastically with white flight, white members of the community moving away, disinvestment, gun violence, and gang activity. So I saw that whole journey of what happened in my community, and I wanted to make it better for everybody, but particularly for the Black and Brown communities that have been neglected for so many years, decades.
And that I ask that because that is not only a dedication that comes from a very deeply personal place and a genuine place, but you're also having to overcome a lot of institutional forces. And in many respects, we see that happening now when we talk about the distrust of the media and this dismantling of certain structures that are put in place. So, how did you do that as a mayor?
Well, when you asked me, what was it like? It was personal, but it was also powerful because I had the opportunity to see how resource allocation plays a role, in what happens to communities and what happens to families. So it was powerful. I think, it was also political and painful. And, for me, I really worked very hard at doing my homework. I'm a student by nature. And so really learning how systems work and what resources are out there and connecting to other entities and communities where we could be collaborative partners or I could bring resources back into the community. Really getting aligned with people who were like minded and really wanting to do the work for the people and be there for the right reasons. So that was a way that I sustained myself. I had 14 members on my city council, which is really insane for a town of 25,000. And I had a, very similar situation to Harold Washington. When he was elected, there was a group on the council that formed immediately the night of the election that was committed to stopping me from making any progress and being in opposition to me. But there were six solid council members that I had. I called them the Super Six. And, we were aligned. We were aligned on our vision. We were aligned on serving people. We were aligned on doing things differently. And so that helped sustain me during that time as well, in addition to working out, throwing some weights around.
Seriously, don't sleep on self care.
Yes,
is
throwing some weights around, help
yes,
deal with stress, and of course, my husband
that's great. That goes a
has
long
a great temperament,
yes.
and just is very patient, so that helped.
In a way, what you're talking about sounds like a microcosm of what we see on Capitol Hill, except that you have people who maybe who are not interested in serving the public good in the majority, and you have a group of people who do want to serve the public on the whole in the minority. Therefore, what can people do to stay empowered and feel like they can take action because safety nets are being taken away, protections for their rights are being taken away? How do people stay empowered? What would you recommend?
I really encourage people to build community. Now more than ever, and I've been, in my work with Catalyst Coaching and Transformation, I do a lot of work with municipalities, with elected leaders. And no matter what is going on in Washington, we still have control at the local level. Our local leaders still have control over our budgets. They may be looking at less funding from the federal government, but with the dollars that they do have, they still get to control that. And I've always said budgets are a reflection of our values. What we value, who we value, that's where we direct our dollars. And I have been driving the message that we are not lost. It is not hopeless because you have some form of control at the local level. There are things that, we can be doing. We see people that are protesting. Some people may not feel safe protesting. And then rightfully, we know that when white people protest, it looks very different than when black people are protesting. When black people protest, there's horses out there, there's SWAT teams out there, there's paddy wagons. We just saw white people protesting. None of that, there was no strong military like police presence. So that may not be the space for you right now. Another thing you can be doing, there's a website called 5calls. It's the number 5calls with an S.org. And that allows you to stay connected to what issues are going on, and you can contact your member of Congress. Before becoming a mayor, I served for 2 members of Congress, and it does make a difference when that phone is ringing off the hook, when those letters are coming in. And if you write personal letters, not just a template that maybe an organization gives you, but you personalize it in some way, those things stand out. But when a congressional office goes from getting 100 calls a day to 500 calls a day, it raises flags and it makes them, start looking. And we have to keep the pressure on. Some people may say, well, he's been in 6 months and it's not working. We have to be diligent and keep the pressure on. Some other things that people can do is just consider, start going to some of your meetings. Go to your school board meeting, go to your village board or city council meetings. And you may want to consider running for office. A lot of people get involved in public service because there's a particular issue, and we've seen that with people that, gun violence, for example. If they had children that experienced a school shooting, now you have this person that's running for office or running for the school board. So it doesn't mean that you have to run for Congress, but you can get involved at the local level. And in the state of Illinois where I live, we have more bodies of government bodies. We have townships, school boards, park districts, various levels where you can get involved.
I really appreciate you mentioning all of those ways, those layers of getting involved because people I have talked to said they feel hopeless. They don't know what to do. One person said, I don't want to protest. I'm afraid to protest. Someone else said, nobody's going to listen to me. Those were excellent takeaways, actionable items. And I really like the fact that you not only are a coach, but you also say to people, it is possible for you to be in public office and you don't have to be at X, Y, and Z level. You can start in a community. You make it accessible and it reminds us that there's something that we can all do. So
Thank
thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Robert. And another thing too, I with the cut that's coming now, and
Yes.
particularly in food, that is an issue that's really near and dear to my heart because I grew up the oldest of 5 kids. And even though I was in a two-parent home, because of other things that were going on that impacted our finances, oftentimes food was a struggle for us. And so we see the SNAP benefits are getting ready to get cut. So I just recently myself went over to a food pantry in my region to see how I can help. And, volunteering at a food pantry, or, making donations, that type of thing. That's another way that you can contribute and help. But I really think people have got to start building community and really looking at what's around them in their community and how they can help strengthen, because we all have strengths. No matter who you are as a person, there's something about you that there's characteristics about you that are strengths. And it's really important that we all look at what we bring to the table and how we can help one another with those strengths.
That is so important to say because, again, when I talked to this one gentleman and he just said it feels hopeless, you forget you feel overwhelmed. And
Yes.
so, starting on the community level, it reminds you we are all in this together and it is possible. One last question. What keeps you encouraged? How do you not get discouraged? How do you stay in the fight? How do you keep going? I mean, you seem like you have endless energy and insight. I mean, you keep going, you volunteer. It's amazing. How do you do it? What do you do? And how can we take some of that with us?
Thank you. I think I'm a person that just has a lot of energy, and I am a person that has anxiety. And so I've been able to channel my anxiety in a way that's productive. But one of the things that I do is I'm really focusing on alignment in my life right now and taking ownership. I am not a victim and I'm not going to live like a victim. And I don't want other people to live like a victim either. There's things that we can control. And what you are not changing, you are choosing.
I love that. What you are
You
not changing, you are
And
choosing.
I heard someone say that, and I have to look up to see who coined that quote. But that is so powerful. And so if you feel like I'm living in a community and there's nothing happening, what are you doing to make it different? Right. But for me, it's really being in alignment. I am really focused on being around people who are on the same path of making their communities better, the people around them better, being grounded in values, what matters to me. And so that's what keeps me going. And I have 4 grandsons.
Wow.
My sugar babies, I call them, and I want things to be better for them. So
Yes.
I wanna make sure that I'm doing my part, to make things better for them. And even other women around me that are serving right now, women are 50%, 50 plus percent of the US population, and we are 50 plus percent of the workforce. And I just believe that a lot of the reason we are having so many issues at the federal level is because we are not adequately represented in this country. We're only about 28% elected at the federal level. And so when you have people making policy decisions, which includes budgets, because budgets are a policy document and they reflect what we value, and we see what this team values. They value the wealthy. They value making sure that they protect their wealth, enhance their wealth, grow their wealth. And so when you don't have enough people there who have lived experience, who are mothers, who understands what it's like to take care of kids, to have to pay for childcare. What do I do when I'm the only one working? I might be a single mom. I might not have access to sick time. I may have, we have people in Congress that have never lost their jobs. They've never been unemployed. They don't know what those things are like.
And
They've
a lot of them come from money.
Yes, a lot of them are wealthy, and so they don't understand the real pain points of the American people, and so we have got to get more women, I believe. We need more representation of what the country actually looks like.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I cannot thank you enough for being here, for sharing your insight, your wisdom, your thought, your encouragement for all of us. And oh, tell me where can people learn more about you and all of the wonderful things that you offer and share to the world?
Thank you again for having me, and especially for allowing me to be your first.
Mhm. Absolutely. Well, great guest.
But you can find me at chasitywells.com. It's Chasity. So I tell people I'm not a belt, and they usually laugh and they remember it's only one T. So it's
Okay.
Chasity Wells, WELLS.com. That's my website. I do have a newsletter called The Leadership Catalyst, and I provided that to you, Robin, that you can
Yes,
share.
absolutely.
I write a bi-monthly newsletter. I provide a free resource. I primarily focus on women who are elected or appointed serving in government leadership roles in the teams they serve. Is primarily who I focus on. But the resources I provide can help any woman that's in leadership. There's also a section in my newsletter called Ally in Action. And so I highlight how men can support women who are in leadership, and I provide resources there as well. So I encourage you all to get connected. I'm on LinkedIn under Chasity Wells. I'm a very provocative writer. I don't sugarcoat, in my newsletter.
I
Um,
love.
and I give tangible, actionable steps that you can take in every newsletter and a free resource to help you in your leadership journey.
What was the biggest power play that you can remember when you were in elected office or that you recommend to women leaders? And I say power play because so often women are undermined when they are in positions of authority, which is why a lot of women don't run for office. You're torn down, you're critiqued in a different way than men are. Sometimes women can be their own worst enemies. What is the biggest piece of advice that you would give to a woman in leadership?
I would encourage her to build her ecosystem. And if she can access a coach to help her to do that, because they can provide real life strategy. I'm actually working with a woman coach now. She's the youngest. She's 32 years old. She's a mom. She's got a baby under a year. Baby just turned a year. Baby was 9 months when we started working together. And so if you're able to access a coach, especially someone like me that has that lived experience, it's helpful because they can strategize with you in real time as the issues come up, because you are going to deal with misogyny, gender bias, double standards, double binds, all the things. And if you add being a minority on top of that, it just intensifies. Building the ecosystem, the people around you who understand, because it's a very few people in the population that really understand what it's like unless you've been in it.
It's really been a pleasure to have you. And everybody, I'm going to put her information and where you can sign up for her newsletter in the information of the podcast. Thank you again, Miss Chasity Wells Armstrong. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Robin.
Now it's time for the Power Play. Here's a recap on tips from Chasity about what you can do to make a difference. First, call your congressperson. It may sound old-fashioned, but picking up the phone and making a call can make a difference. Also, check out the website 5calls.org. If you're not sure what issue you want to tackle, this tells you the best ones to target if you're going to reach out to your elected official. And finally, get involved locally. You can still make a difference in your community. Donate or even lead, no matter how small the organization. Remember, your voice does matter. Thanks so much for joining us. We hope you're feeling a little more hopeful, a little less stuck, and maybe even inspired to take action, because democracy does work when we all participate. Want more? You can go to my website, democracydoes.com, and sign up to get our newsletter, alerts on when our next episode drops, and as a bonus, you'll get a free community engagement toolkit with ideas on how to get involved at your comfort level. Let's get in the game together. Until next time, I'm your host, Robin Hamilton.